Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel today. I have my second share for you for the October Colour Blast kit, and this kit is filled with the 7 Dot Studio Garden Party Collection. It's very, very pretty. I love it. Also, the exclusive designs by Michelle Grant, which are these two dies that I'm cutting. This one is called Caged Beauty, I think. Yes, Cage Beauty and Mushroom Field. So Mushroom Field comes in the main kit, and this Caged Beauty, is part of the Platinum. So if you get the Platinum kit, you'll get all of the dies. I'm just showing you, I've cut those on black cardstock. I love those little mushrooms. They are so cute. Okay, so I'm using my embossing ink in a dabber. Now, if you don't have a dabber, you could absolutely use an ink pad, or even if you've got one of the embossing pens, that would work as well. Colour embossing powder in Bling, and I'm just coating that whole black cardstock with the ink and the powder. I'm going to heat set that, and you can see the magic there. It looks awesome. If you haven't seen the colour shimmer products on black cardstock, they look amazing. The colours really pop. So I'm doing the same thing here with the cage and the butterfly. Make sure that you tip onto something that you can tip back into the pot, otherwise you will end up with embossing powder everywhere. Now, I started this art journal page with not really a great idea of what I wanted to do. I really just wanted to pull out some product and play, see what I came up with. And because I didn't really know what I was doing, I had to choose which art journal I was going to work in. I ended up choosing my spiral bound one, and the reason I chose my spiral bound one is because with a spiral in the middle of the page, it kind of lends itself a little bit better to single pages rather than a double page spread. I'm just measuring my art journal so that I know what size to cut it, and I ended up cutting mine to 250 by 175, and that's in mils. You can see I'm just trimming that down, and I'm going to set aside those butterflies. You'll be really surprised to learn I'm going to fussy cut all of those butterflies out for some more embellishments on my other projects. So my first step here, I love this pattern, I really, really do, but it was a bit bold for the background, so I'm using the Colour Blast White Heavy Gesso, putting a thin layer all over this page that I've cut down. You will see that I go back in around the edges with a bit of a thicker layer as well, which I kind of blend the edges of the paper out a little bit so that there's not a harsh line between this and that. You can see there it kind of fades it a little bit better between the darkness of the butterflies and the white of the gesso. So I'm just adding that all the way around the four edges. And if you weren't aware, you can use gesso as a medium to stick with. I decided that I wanted to make the frame around the edge of my page, because I have cut my paper a little bit smaller than my actual page. I decided I was going to make that black. It would make it a bit easier for me to blend it out. So I'm just using my black heavy gesso. Now, if you noticed, when I put the gesso on the bottom of the page, it kind of went on a bit funny, but that was me. That was I originally thought I was going to do white gesso, and then I changed my mind. Instead of leaving that to dry, I wiped it off with a wet wipe, and then I tried to go straight over the top with the black gesso, but the page was still wet, so it was a bit, it just didn't work the way that it's meant to. That's definitely me, not the gesso. So as you can see, I am just doing a really messy coat around the four edges. I'm going to pop that aside to dry, and then I'm going to make sure that this is completely dry before I start working on it. So getting my placement there of where those die cuts are going to go. I was going to use the A4 stencil that came in the Platinum kit. Or did I? No, I didn't. I was going to. I checked for size and then at the last minute I changed my mind. I am going to do some stamping here and I'm using this stamp set which is called, what's it called? Live Your Dreams. I'm going to use the butterfly and the mushrooms and I'm going to use my stamp platform to make sure I get a really good impression there. Add that one behind where I know my mushrooms are going to go, my die cut ones. Clear my stamp off and then I'm going to stamp up in the top rightish corner with that butterfly. You'll see me muck around with this stamp for a minute. I was just making sure that the text on either side of the butterfly was reasonably straight. Inking that up, stamping that down. Easy peasy. Making sure I'm happy with the placement. I toyed with the idea of doing another stamp. You'll see me in just a second. I'm going to grab that stamp sheet. I thought about putting the cage there and then change my mind. I'm going to give this a quick dry with my heat tool because I have used my VersaFine. It does take a little while to dry. This does warp my page. The gesso has already warped my page and then adding more heat is going to warp it even more. Be warned, especially if you're going to try to copy this, try to do this particular page. It was fun and like I said in the beginning, it was more about experimenting and playing with product. I wasn't sure what I was going to end up with or even what I wanted to end up with. So I'm mixing together some of the Colour Blast Artist Ink in Bordeaux with some water. You can see here I pulled out the smaller stencil. Just having a bit of a test on some scrap paper. I'm really happy with how that looks. Flip it over, do some stamping as well. And I'm like, yep, I'm going to go with that. Clean off my stencil because I don't want what I don't want on my page. Now remember, my page is very warped. I'm going to use some blue tack. I'm like, this will help. This will help. And I'm going to put some under the four corners and then on the two sides. I'm going to tape my stencil down as well. Now I'm not sure if I would have got a different result if I had done something a little bit differently. I'll explain in a second. But I do not get a very clear image here, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. I really like that it just adds an extra layer of something in the background. So here you can see I've covered the four edges because I didn't want the overspray. Now if I'd left this and not used paper to pick up the extra colour, then perhaps I may have ended up with a different result. But because my paper was so warped, anyway, I may have still ended up with this hot mess. But that's okay. Like I said, it just adds an extra layer of colour. I did mostly dry that off, but there were a couple of bits that were taking forever to dry off. And I didn't like the colour they dried when I used my heat tool, so I just used my paper towel. I flipped my stencil over and used it as a stamp, and you can see it's just added an extra layer of colour again. I did want more of the actual shape of the stencil, so I've grabbed my white gesso again. You can see I've placed it so that it's kind of covering up some of the black, but I don't put any gesso through where my stamping is. Try to keep as much of it off the stamping as I can, and I'm just adding this same stencil again straight over the top. I do take my stencil off and clean it, and I walked away and let it mostly dry. It's not 100% dry, but I decided that I was going to add a bit of something to the gesso here, so I've got my Colour Blast embossing powder in Bling again and a fan brush, and I'm literally just sprinkling the embossing powder all over that gesso. Because it's still wet, it gives somewhere for it to stick. I've heat set that, and there is a bit of a close-up. It just gives a little bit of extra texture, detail, a little bit of sparkle, and I really like the effect it gives. Okay, So I knew this was something that I had in mind that I wanted to do right from the beginning. I knew I wanted to do some drips with this Bordeaux Artist ink. So I'm just using a paintbrush here, and you can see I'm just painting along the top edge, tipping my page up, tapping it down. I'm going to add some water, and then I'm going to go back in with more ink and just get it to run. It just drips down the page. I do add in a few vertical lines just to get it to move a bit more. And you'll see as I add more colour, I get a bit more liberal with the colour and a bit more liberal with how I'm applying the colour. I just kind of dab it on instead of paint it delicately, which is kind of what I'm doing. So I'm just adding a couple more drips to get more vertical, to get more drips happening, adding in a few vertical lines. And you can see here I'm just adding a bit more colour, and here I'm just kind of smushing my paintbrush where I want more colour, where I want it to drip a bit more. And I'm just going to let that do its thing. So I do take my paper towel to it. I'm not real keen on the colour that the ink dries, not for this project. When you heat set it, kind of has more of a rusty colour to it. So I do use my paper towel to dry that up. This doily, it's very, very pretty, but I couldn't ever see myself using it as a whole piece, so I decided to cut some flowers. I'm going to add those to the layers that I add to my page here, and you can see I'm just placing things where I think I want them. I ended up with 3 of those flowers. One's going to go on the top left-hand side of the cage, one to the top right-hand side of the cage, and one underneath those mushrooms. But first I'm going to add some more, well, not some more, some black splatters. I just thought that would tie everything a bit more together. So the black heavy gesso, a little bit of water, and off I go. Making sure I'm still happy with the placement. And I'm pretty sure I start sticking. Yes. So I'm going to use my matte medium here, paintbrush. Now, if you're anything like me, you often forget to clean paintbrushes. It's part of the reason why I always have a pot of water on my desk so that I don't have to remember to go and clean my paintbrushes in the middle of creating. What I actually do, it's a bit lazy, but it works, and it means I'm not replacing my paintbrushes every 5 minutes. Once I'm finished with my matte medium or my glue or whichever thick, yucky, hard medium to clean I'm using, I just dump it straight in the water and leave it to soak. Now, I hope that this plays better when it plays back, but I've sped this part of the video up by like 16 times because it's just me placing bits and pieces of these die cuts, and I'm having a bit of a hard time watching it. So I've already recorded this voiceover once. Hopefully it is okay. So I was happy with my placement, took a photo of what I'd done, and then I used my VersaFine ink again and just inked up all around the edges of all of those pieces. Again, this is in super sped up speed, 16 times, because I'm just sticking things here, but I thought you might like to see my process, that I built it in 2 clusters and then I stuck it together. So I'm just layering things on top and underneath and using some foam tape and some wet glue and using my photo as a reference, taking things off, adding a bit more foam, adding a bit more glue. I added some of this gold bead twine to my tag. Add my stapler to make sure it stays stuck. I'm going to trim off the excess here. And I've got a few finishing touches to add. Pretty sure I come in with my word stickers next. I just picked 3 phrases. I've trimmed them down a little bit so they're all different lengths. And I'm just going to stick those on that big cluster that I've made there. some more white splatters. Yep. So my white heavy gesso and some water, and I'm just mixing that up, and I'm going to sprinkle. Now I do go quite heavy-handed here, and I really like the look of this. Obviously, if you don't, then don't add so many. But I was kind of happy in my little zone, creating and playing and adding splatters and adding a few more ephemera bits, and yeah, I really I had fun making this. So my white splatters, and then black rhinestones. So I just dump two, I think, of the little sections out on my desk, and you can see I'm just dotting my glue in random places, in between layers, on top of a couple of layers, and I'm just going to go in with my Cameo Pick Me Up tool and place those. I don't make you watch all of this, I just wanted to leave a little bit of processing for you. Same makeup sponge and my black Versa fine ink around the edge, and I'm going to stick it into my journal. So I've got I think that's about a 2-inch wide brush there. My matte medium again, and I'm just applying the glue to my journal rather than to my page. And then I am just adding a bit more glue to the edges of my page to make sure that it's all stuck down. I'm going to give you a close up here. I'm really happy with this. Like I said, it was a lot of fun to play. Playing with your products is always fun. If you don't know what it does, pull it out, have a play, learn. That's what art journals are for as well. Or, you know, cut pieces of cardstock big enough that they can be card fronts or something. It's a fun way of getting to know your products. So I had a heap of fun making this art journal page, something a little bit different for me, but I do like doing different things as well. So if you have any questions, please make sure you leave them below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I hope you are enjoying the shares of the kit this month. I may have one more share for you. I'm not sure yet. I haven't made it, so it will be a surprise for everyone. I hope you've enjoyed. A big welcome to all of my new subscribers. A big thank you to all of my loyal supporters and followers. I really do appreciate every single comment, every single like, every single view. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will see you again soon. Bye!